This is undoubtedly one of the most distressing and disturbing narratives in the Old Testament. To be totally honest, it is one of the darkest passages in the whole Bible. Before we go any further, I want to leave a warning. The content of this video may not be suitable for all ages and can remind painful situations. If you choose to continue, be aware that the story can be quite disturbing. The account we are going to address is in chapters 19 to 21 of the book of Judges. Many have heard of chapter 19, but few go ahead and understand the full sequence of events. Despite its disturbing content, there are deep and valuable lessons that we can draw. First, I will narrate the events in an engaging way, bringing you into history. Then, we will reflect on the lessons that we can take from this passage. We started in Judges 19:1, in a time of great disorder in Israel when the country had no king. A Levite, who lived in the remote mountains of Ephraim, took a woman from Bethlehem in Judah to be his concubine. Here we have a man from the tribe of Levi, living in northern Israel, who chooses a woman from the south, from Bethlehem, to be his wife or concubine. As time went by, she was unfaithful and left him, returning to her father's house in Bethlehem, where she stayed for 4 months. Despite the betrayal, the Levite decides to go after her. He makes a long journey from the north, in the mountains of Ephraim, to the south, in Bethlehem, with the aim of bringing her back. When he arrives there, the woman's father warmly welcomes him. Several times the Levite tries to leave, saying to his father-in-law, "I must go, give my wife back so that I can come home." However, the father insists, "Stay 1 more night." The Levite eventually accepts, and this cycle repeats for a few days until he finally decides, "I appreciate your hospitality, but I must go." This is where the tragedy really begins to unfold. As the Levite traveled with his concubine back home, leaving Bethlehem and heading north to Ephraim, they came close to Jebus at nightfall. The servant suggested, "Master, why don't we stop here at Jebus for the night?" But the Levite refused. "We will not stay in a city of strangers where there are no Israelites. We will continue to Gibeah." The servant insisted, "What if we stopped at Gibeah or Ramah?" They went on their way, and at nightfall they came to Gibeah in the land of the tribe of Benjamin. However, something unexpected happened. No one in the city was willing to receive them. In a society where hospitality was a central value, this rejection was surprising. Finally, an old man appeared in the square and asked them, "Why are you here? No one has taken you in." The Levite replied, "No one has offered us shelter." The old man then said, "Come to my house tonight." The Levite accepted the offer, explaining, "Thank you very much, but we don't need much. We have food for ourselves and the donkeys. We just need a safe place to rest." The old man insisted, "Don't worry about it. Come and stay with me." And so the Levite, his servant, and his concubine lodged themselves in the man's house at Gibeah, but the quiet would not last long. During the night, a group of malicious men from the city surrounded the house and began to knock on the door, demanding the owner of the house, "Bring the man who is staying there. We want to abuse him." At this point, the narrative takes an even darker turn. The men of Gibeah, knowing that the Levite was staying with the elderly man, demanded that he be delivered so that they could rape him. What follows is an even more devastating and disturbing sequence of events. The old man leaves the house in despair and begs, "Please do not do this cruelty, my brothers. This man is under my protection. Do not commit such atrocity. If necessary, take my virgin daughter and his concubine. Do what you will with them, but do not harm him." What happens next is extremely difficult to imagine. According to verse 25, the appeal of the elderly is ignored. Then, in a shocking act, the Levite gives his concubine to men. The woman is brutally attacked and abused all night until dawn. When the daylight comes, they let it go. That's exactly why I mentioned that this video may be upsetting to some. Visualize the scene. A group of men taking turns in horrible acts against this woman all night. A real nightmare. At dawn, the woman manages to crawl back to the house where her master was. Barely able to stand up, she collapses in the door. Can you imagine the extreme suffering she went through, beaten and exhausted? With her last strength, she crawls to the entrance of the house and there remains. Now, watch what happens next. In the morning, the Levite gets up, opens the doors and prepares to continue his journey. And there was his concubine lying by the door with her hands extended over the threshold, He says to her, "Get up, let's go." But there is no answer. The woman had been so brutally attacked that she did not resist and died. The text goes on to say that the Levite put her on his ass and took her home. What happens next is an unspeakable sadness and brutality. When he arrives home, he takes a knife and in one horrendous act disassembles his concubine into 12 pieces, cutting her limb by limb. Then he sends these pieces throughout the territory of Israel. The people who received this message were stunned. All who witnessed what happened said, "We have never seen anything like this, not even since the time when the Israelites came out of Egypt." Reflect on it and discuss the impact. This man, in a desperate act, sent a piece of the body of his deceased concubine to each of the 12 tribes of Israel, possibly accompanied by a letter detailing the events. His purpose was to expose the atrocity committed by his own brothers, the tribe of Benjamin. When the tribes of Israel heard about the event, they realized that such barbarity had no precedent in their history. The narrative continues in chapters 20 and 21, and it is crucial to pay attention to those chapters. Now, let's reflect on some lessons we can learn from this disturbing story. The first lesson is this: lack of responsibility can lead us astray from the right path. Judges 19:1 tells us, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Without responsibility or someone to question and supervise us, we are more likely to make wrong decisions." Why do we think we can make decisions without being accountable to anyone else? That is exactly what happened in Israel. The law was present, but no one followed it. The lack of enforcement led people to commit acts they never imagined being capable. The second lesson is the importance of recognizing each human being as bearer of the image of God. See the man's behavior. He considers it wrong for wicked men to do whatever they want with him, but is willing to offer his own daughter and concubine as substitutes. To him, the life and dignity of a man seem to be worth more than those of his own daughter and concubine. It is essential to recognize the value of each person, including those we see and consume online. If you struggle to stop accessing content that you know is inappropriate, remember that every person on the screen is a human being made in the image of God, someone who could be your daughter. Imagine if you would like someone to look at your daughter the same way you are looking at those people on the screen. This perspective can help maintain the respect and dignity that everyone deserves. In addition, there is a third lesson to be highlighted. The more we move away from God, the more susceptible we become to doing things that we would never have imagined. When we look at the book of Judges, we see the trajectory of a nation that gradually turned away from God. What occurs in chapters 19 to 21 is the apex of this spiritual detachment. It shows how far the nation has strayed from God. And my friend, we are no different. If we do not keep a close connection with God, if we deviate, we will end up like the Israelites, doing things that 10 years ago we would never have imagined. Someone could say to us, "Will you ever do that?" And we would say, "No, never. I would never divorce, never have an extramarital affair, never be fired for watching something inappropriate at work, never use drugs or do anything that I disapprove of." However, the more we move away from God, the more vulnerable we become to making these mistakes. But the story doesn't end in chapter 19, it gets worse. Chapter 20 describes a civil war between the 11 tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin, responsible for the terrible sin against their own brethren. I encourage you to read chapters 20 and 21 carefully. In short, there was a devastating battle, resulting in the deaths of thousands of people on both sides. In the end, only 600 men from the tribe of Benjamin survived. In chapter 21, a new concern arises among the remaining 11 tribes. The possibility of the tribe of Benjamin disappearing, as there are only 600 men and no Benjamite women available for marriage, which would threaten the continuity of the lineage. Thus, a crucial dilemma arises: how to ensure the preservation of this tribe. This situation teaches us a fourth vital lesson. Every wrong choice we make generates consequences that are beyond our control. Despite the abominable actions of the Benjamites, the decision of the other tribes to fight against their brethren and cause such destruction was a deliberate choice. Now, everyone must face the consequences of their actions. The Benjamites have paid a high price for their actions, and the 11 tribes face the ramifications of their own decisions. The point here is clear. We can choose our sins, but we cannot choose the consequences that come with them. Each choice brings results, And although we can decide our actions, we have no control over what happens next. In response, the Israelites go to the clan of Jabesh-Gilead and kill the men of that city. They find 400 women who were still virgins and offer them to 400 of the remaining 600 Benjamite men, allowing them to marry and have children. However, a mathematical problem arises. There are still 200 men without wives. Faced with this difficulty, the Israelites formulate an even more controversial solution. Recalling a previously made vow not to give their daughters in marriage to the Benjamites, they argue that technically, the vow does not prohibit the kidnapping of women for this purpose. Then they organize a party in Shiloh, and during the event instruct the Benjamites to kidnap women from the dances that take place on the site. Thus, the Benjamites obtain wives for all their remaining men, although this solution is not morally unquestionable. This complex and disturbing story makes us reflect on the impact of our actions and the difficulty of correcting mistakes when they accumulate. The cycle of wrong decisions and their consequences is a recurring theme, showing that choices made in times of crisis can lead to even more problematic solutions. This strategy of the Israelites, by sending their daughters to a festival where the Benjaminites could kidnap them, illustrates the moral complexity and hopelessness in the midst of wrong decisions. By creating a scenario where the Benjamites could marry without formally violating the vow not to give their daughters in marriage, history reveals how tortuous solutions can arise from complicated situations. These 200 Benjamite men ended up kidnapping women during the festival in a desperate attempt to ensure the continuity of their tribe. This act, while seemingly solving an immediate problem, highlights a fundamental truth. A bad decision can trigger a series of negative and prolonged consequences. The impact of these bad decisions is vast and painful. Many involved were unrelated to the original sin, but suffered the consequences. The inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead lost their men, women were uprooted from their families, and the whole tribe of Benjamin was marked by a cycle of violence and revenge. Tragedy reverberates through the lives of many, demonstrating how errors of judgment can have deep and painful ramifications, yet history offers a message of hope. Even amid the destruction and chaos generated by wrong decisions, there is a note of grace. The Benjamites, despite the horrors, managed to settle down. They captured the necessary number of women, returned to their lands and rebuilt their cities. The nation of Israel, despite its failures and riots, began to recover and rise again. The fifth and final lesson we can draw is that even in our most disastrous decisions, God offers grace and opportunities for redemption. Although the story of the book of Judges is a narrative of great failures and their consequences, it also reminds us that God's grace can restore and transform even the most gloomy situations. This narrative, while warning about the impact of our decisions and the importance of responsibility, is also a testimony to God's ability to offer grace and renewal even in the most difficult and painful situations. This conclusion is a powerful reminder of the importance of our decisions and the need for moral responsibility. By emphasizing that each choice has consequences that can be broad and lasting, the video offers a deep reflection on the impact of our actions on the lives of others and ourselves. The final verse of the book of Judges emphasizes the lack of leadership and the consequent fragmented morality, highlighting how crucial it is to have solid guidance and principles in our lives. The message that God still offers grace, even in the face of the worst decisions, is a sign of hope and redemption. If you take anything from this video, I hope it is this fundamental lesson. Every decision we make has consequences, often unpredictable and beyond our control. The repercussions of our choices can be profound and lasting, affecting not only ourselves but others around us. Until the next video, goodbye for now and may God bless you.